Thank you all for coming over to the National Press Club this morning. I'm Mark Sheff. I'm chair of the Newsmakers Committee. It's my pleasure today to host Dick Drechsler, a cancer survivor, a sportsman, and an activist. After surviving a life-threatening bout with stage 3 neck and throat cancer that left Dick unable to eat, he undertook a sailing odyssey, which involved traveling 2,600 miles from Mexico to Alaska. This voyage led both to a book, Manning Up in Alaska, which is available out at the press sign-in table, as well as to a foundation that Dick established called Sail Through Cancer. So it is a pleasure to welcome to the podium Dick Drechsler.
Well, good morning, and thank you all for coming. I'm using a mic even though it's a small room because my affliction is in my throat, so I don't want to lose my voice halfway through this. The question is, how did I become an advocate for cancer survivors? I'm one myself. That's probably the long and the short of it. I was diagnosed in early 2005 with stage 3, borderline stage 4 neck and throat cancer. I was told that I had 4 to 6 months to live. That if my life was going to continue, the treatment was going to be radical and extremely invasive and extremely difficult. I didn't really know what that meant. I just said, you know, what's my option? And there wasn't one, so I said, well, let's just get on with it. What happened to me was that during the process of the radiation, my throat actually grew shut. They had put me on a feeding tube to sustain me because my throat was going to be pretty sore and raw as it was. And nobody monitored my throat during the process, so when I finished the treatment and things had settled down a little bit, the doctor said, well, go ahead and start on soft foods and some liquids. So I went home all excited, and I grabbed something to drink, and it just went everywhere but down my throat. Same thing with some food I tried. So I went back to the doctor the next day, and I said, you know, what's going on? He sent me to the surgeon. Surgeon numbed up my throat, put a scope down, and said, I've never seen this before. He says, your throat is completely shut. That began a 7-month quest to find a solution. But anyway, long story short, after 7 months, we found a doctor in the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston who had done 5 experimental operations on people with exactly my affliction. I was patient number 6. And they got my throat open to the point where I could take, just with great difficulty, I could get some liquids down. And they started a year-long process of dilating my throat every 4 to 6 weeks in the hope that they might be able to get it to where I could eat food. But it didn't happen. The last time they did it, I got a small tear in my esophagus, and they said, that's it. You are what you are. So my primary message really became, you know, there's life after cancer. I was forced into retirement. My lifelong dream had been to go cruising on a sailboat. So my wife and I sold the company and bought a larger boat, decided to go sailing. My story, much to my surprise, began to resonate. I had put together a website, and I told, I don't know, under 50 people about it for sure. And just kind of to be able to keep friends and family aware of you know, what we were doing and where we were going. I thought they'd be interested. And so about, excuse me, 3 months into it, I looked at the statistics, and there was 12,000 hits on the website. So I was amazed. I'm going, where did 12,000 people come from? So I started asking people that I knew had it and were looking at it. And it turned out that my lead oncologist and several of my other doctors were telling my story as an inspiration to others. And of course, you know, when you live your own story, you kind of don't get a sense of it. You know, it's just my story. Everybody's got a story. Why is mine special? But it kind of snowballed in the middle of 2007. The publisher of Latitude 38 magazine in San Francisco wrote an article about me. And he called it From Feeding Tube to Cruising the Med, because that's our ultimate goal, is to take the boat to the Med. That month, I had 50,000 hits on my website. And I started getting emails from cancer patients and cancer survivors all over the country And it was incredibly moving and motivating to me to realize that, you know, my story was helping so many people. That I wrote a book is really amazing. My wife is an author by trade, and I would have thought if anybody in our family was going to write a book, it would be Sharon. But we sailed last year from Mexico to Alaska and came back and wintered in British Columbia near Victoria on Vancouver Island, and the weather was terrible. And for much of the time, the boat was under snow, and we were basically trapped inside. So I'm not a guy that you really ought to try to cage. So I decided I was going to make a little picture book with the pictures that I had taken. I said, well, I've got an interesting sailing history. It goes back 50 years, so maybe I'll write a couple of pages as a preamble to this little picture book I'm going to make. I started writing, and I was about halfway through my sailing history, and I had 50 pages. And I thought, I could write a book. So it was an experience. I learned something about writing a book. When you get to the 5th chapter, you forget everything you said in the 1st chapter. So the only way I could really do it was kind of reread the book and, you know, get back in the mood and follow the threads that I had started, though I didn't forget them. And the way to do that was to write at night. So when Sharon went to bed around 11:30 at night, I started writing. And for 30 days, I wrote from about 11 o'clock at night till sunrise. And I wrote a book. So you'll read it. It's getting good reviews. And, of course, the whole point of the book is to be inspirational to others and, again, to spread the word that there's life after cancer. We have a short 1-minute video that I think I'll show. Thank you very much for coming. I will autograph your books if you like. I'll be around as long as it takes.